Welcome back, everybody. I'm wearing my Fighter and the Kid t-shirt, which is about 3 sizes too small, but I don't mind because it shows off my gains, my huge muscles.
Looking swole.
Yeah, got my swole on. Actually, I've been recovering. Dennis and I both have been recovering from the effects of getting swole on Monday.
Boy, that rig class is just brutal.
We're gonna see what
class,
happens.
Though.
It's a great class. I agree. Shout out to our man Ron Casper. He's never ever going to hear this, but if anybody knows him, give him a pat on the back.
You never know.
That's true. Somebody might know him. So in this episode, we're going to talk about. So some of you may or may not have listened to episode 3 that I put out, which was just me going on and on for like an hour about why I left the Mormon Church and the kind of my story of how it all happened. Anyway, Denis also listened, like the good roommate that he is, and he had some questions.
And I'm curious as can be.
Yeah. So I said, hey, let's start the podcast, and you can ask me your questions. And I haven't seen any of these questions. I specifically asked him not to tell me them beforehand. So this is going to be live and raw and real.
Well, I mean, honestly, right from the get-go, I want to say that I'm impressed. I loved it. I thought it was very, very genuine. And it's pretty powerful stuff. And I think that it's really helpful for those people that may not voice it the same way you do. I think a lot of people may have the same thoughts, but are afraid to say something. So congrats.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
On the courage.
Yeah,
so that's
thank you.
really, really great.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's so much, and it's just it's very, very intriguing, and kind of like right off the bat, I would ask, why now? What makes you, what has brought you to a point where you say, you know what, I just got to say it?
Do you mean like what brought me to the point of saying it, or what brought me to the point of like actually leaving?
What brought you to the point where you actually had to say something about it?
To go public with it? That's a great question. I think a big part of it, I kind of started the podcast up and finished it by talking about my family. These fine people up here. See how well that was placed? It's perfectly placed.
That is genius, actually.
I just barely put two and two together on that one. But a big part of it was I kind of took a break from talking to a lot of my family members, which is going to sound weird, but I just needed some space to really process how I was going to move forward in different things. And I just kind of got sick of not being involved in their lives and not really being able to talk to them. And like one of my oldest nephew is getting married, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and I didn't want to be not part of that, because my family has been my biggest support system through everything that's happened. The divorce, they were my biggest supporters. Everything that I've done. I mean, it actually starts long before even just the divorce. When I went on my mission to Ukraine, I messed up my knee and I had to come back for surgery, which is very rare.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very rare to come home. And it's even rarer to go back on your mission after that, because missions aren't easy. They're tough.
You messed it up there?
I messed it up there. The little boy from Arizona doesn't know how to walk on Ukrainian ice. So I kept slipping and I jacked up my knee pretty bad.
That's the black ice.
Exactly. They thought that I had torn my ACL. But anyway, I went back, but they were really supportive, and it wasn't supportive in the sense of, oh, we're here for you, we'll help you get back. It was, like we're here for you no matter what choice you make. Like if you're going to go back, that's awesome. If not, it's fine. We're here for you either way.
Oh, that's good.
So I think the thing about now is I kind of got antsy about not being able to talk to them, and it just felt like that combined with starting the podcast and wanting to be a little bit more public about some things and wanting to talk about things, it just sort of came to a head all at the same time. And it was like that was a good reason for me to go ahead and do it.
And the reason I ask is also, I have this feeling, and it's after listening to the podcast, is, it feels like you know yourself that much better, where you can actually now come out and talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's a sense of comfort
yeah.
where you can actually, discuss it, put it out there, and know that you're 100% okay with it.
Yeah. I think, that's a good point. And I think a lot of it has to,
Or at least that's what I kind of heard as well.
No, I think it does come from that place of self-discovery. Because I spent the last probably year and a half to almost 2 years really focusing on discovering what I wanted out of life and what the implications of that were and all of that. And so I think getting and becoming more clear on what it is that I want out of life, and just being more clear on who I am, and here are the things that I like, and here are the things that I don't like, and here's what I want, and letting all of the sort of superficial desires that I was sort of trained to have before just kind of start to fall away, and just realize who I am and what I want has been super powerful. So yeah, I think that's a good observation. I probably wouldn't have pointed that out myself, as I didn't, but but yeah, that's a good point. Being more sure of me and what I want, and that just sort of coming out.
What was interesting was, you talk about having the mission, right?
Yeah.
In the Mormon community.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about, I come from a completely out of the box, viewpoint here. And it sounds like obviously the goal of the mission is to do just that, right? To find yourself.
I'm actually glad you asked that question. I haven't thought about this I got back from my mission in 2008, so it's been coming up on 8 years now since I got back. But I remember while I was out there having the question of, why do they send 19 and 20-year-olds to do this stuff? You know what I mean? Because you think about sending people out to go and try and convince other people to join a church. You think you would send people that were educated, that knew more like about the church, that had some life experience, that could relate to people. And we didn't have. Ukraine is a part of the world where, by Mormon missionary standards, the success rate is really low.
Why did you pick Ukraine?
I didn't pick it. The Mormon, when you go on a mission as a Mormon, they assign you where you're going.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
It is kind of cool, actually, the way that it all. Kind of the way everything came together, and the fact that I went there, and what that has, the implications of that on the rest of my life.
Okay.
But it was not what you would consider a successful mission, in the sense of baptisms, conversions, people that we brought to the church. Most of that's just because a lot of the culture in Ukraine and the experiences that the people have been through. But in fact, I remember where I was when I had this thought. The apartment that I was in was in Donetsk, in the Petrovsky Raion, and I was standing there, and I thought to myself, no, the point of sending 19 and 20-year-olds out on a mission can't be because they're really good at teaching, or they're really good at convincing people, or they're really good salesmen, because they're not. It's for them. Like it's to give them a chance to discover themselves within the confines and the paradigm of the church, obviously, because they're out. As a missionary, you do missionary stuff all the time.
So, was one of the missions in the mission is to bring more people into the Mormon community?
That's the primary mission of a mission. That's the primary mission.
Gotcha.
Is to bring. That's what the work is.
I probably sound like an idiot.
No, this is awesome, and
honestly,
I love that you asked it that way.
But it's just that I really don't know.
Yeah, this is why this is why I wanted to. I thought it was cool that he would ask these questions, is because there's no background,
and nor did I do any research.
No research,
because to be honest with you, I just kind of want to learn it from you.
Yeah.
I want your take.
Well, I think the perspective too is important, especially. Excuse me, man. I shouldn't have drinking that root beer before. Especially considering what we're talking about, which is the podcast, which the mission plays a huge part in that whole conversation, that whole part of the process. So, for me, when you go on a mission, the work that you're doing is trying to find people to bring into the church. So you'll go out on the streets and you'll talk to people. You just approach people. You'll go knock on doors. You'll do activities like we taught English once a week. So we'd have people come in and teach them English at the church building. So people would get, a chance to experience the building and those kinds of things. And it was all day, every day. I mean, we got up at 6:30 and we did studies until about 10:30, and then we were out on the street until 9, and then we'd come home and then reset for the next day. So we had one day a week that was like our preparation day, where we would do laundry and play sports and stuff like that, but write letters home, that kind of thing. But that was the main thing. But really underneath, it seemed obvious to me that the reason why the church was sending us out was less because we were going to be the most effective at getting people into the church, and more because it was going to be a good positive experience for us moving forward.
Because one of the things that you mentioned was your mission was transformative, but it wasn't necessarily the best experience.
Yeah.
So what was that? What was the transformative that you went through? What's that transformation?
Transformative. That's a great question. The mission was transformative in the sense that I'll never be the person that I was before because of the experiences that I had. The people that I met.
Fair enough.
I mean, I learned a new language. I learned to interact with people. I learned how to basically survive on my own in another country. Learned a lot about myself as far as like studying habits and eating habits, and just I kind of learned a lot about myself. Not nearly as much as I've learned, say, in the past like year and a half. But I just I was put into a situation where I was forced to do things that I never had even thought to do before, because I was out there. I mean, you're not under any sort of direct supervision. You're kind of, the day-to-day is sort of on your own. And so I think transformative in the sense that it really forced me to shed a lot of the immature ways of being that I had before. I mean, before I went on my mission, I was incredibly judgmental and incredibly harsh with other people, and I didn't give very much consideration to other people's point of view or where they were coming from or any of that kind of stuff, because the way that I knew or saw things was the way that it was. And after experiencing Ukraine and the fact that, first of all, Russians and Ukrainians, they think literally backwards of the way that we do.
It's pretty different.
Yeah, and realizing that you're the minority in a country, the way you think is like everybody else there thinks that way. At first you think, oh, the entire country of Ukraine is insane. That's the thought at first. But then after a while you're like, only the American missionaries are saying this. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
So it just, I became a lot less judgmental, and things sort of changed that way.
Well, I mean, part of it, just from personal experience too, is that it's incredibly important to see a difference. No matter how big or small, you need to be put, in a situation where you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is a reality check.
Yeah.
What I thought.
I wasn't expecting this. Yeah.
What I thought should be isn't at all.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So.
And a lot of the missionaries struggled with that. Like, that was a big thing. When I say things like, we thought that the entire country of Ukraine was off their rocker, that was a very widely accepted view. We talked about that all the time. We'd be like, oh, these Ukrainians, they're so silly. Like, there's a date sometime in the middle to the end of September when all the old ladies that are sitting out on the street start yelling at you for not wearing a hat. It's completely arbitrary, but it's all on the same day. And we always thought that was the funniest thing. And sometimes we'd walk without hats just to get them upset, right, and do all these things. But that's the type of thing, is we were so quick to hold on to our way of doing things and not realize that we were just part of it was a different culture, and it's just as valid as ours, even though we were raised in ours, if that makes sense.
Well, what's funny is, so I was back in Ukraine, I think it's been about 3 years now. And one of the questions a friend had for me was, do you own a gun? And I was like, what in the world? Like, I haven't even thought about this. Like I never even thought about
Yeah.
getting a gun.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And then it's funny because you kind of look at, you watch TV and you realize, wow, all these movies that they're showing are like Rambo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Black Hawk Down, Rambo, and whatever other movie that you can think of that's like military.
Right.
And they have this in their mind. They're like, wow, Americans are, wow, they're crazy.
Yeah.
They just want to, take over and shoot people.
Right.
And I'm just like, no, I don't have a gun.
Yeah.
Like I live in a pretty quiet town.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really, really nice, actually. I say New York, they're like New York City.
New York City? Yeah.
So, I mean,
Do you know George Bush? I got that one all the time.
Yeah. It's just funny because you need to go to and see parts of the world, because what's presented to the people that are there of what else is out there through TV, through whatever, is just, in all honesty, it's not right.
Right.
And it's not right that I'm saying that it's wrong or something bad. It's just not the truth.
Yeah, it's incorrect.
Yeah.
It's inaccurate.
It's inaccurate.
Yeah.
So,
we always used to, one of the funny one was the Ukrainian. We always used to make fun of this, but the way that Ukrainians and Russians think that Americans think about Ukrainians and Russians, we would get this all the time. They would ask us, so do you guys think that we have bears running in the streets? Literally, that is exactly, almost verbatim what they, obviously in Russian, but that's verbatim what they would say. Because some movie sometime got it into their heads that Americans think that Russians live with bears, right? The bears just run around in the streets. So they would be like, you weren't surprised that there are no bears, were you? And we're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, you guys don't think that we have bears running in the street? I'm like, no, what are you talking about?
Christ.
It's pretty funny.
So, anyway, kind of going back. So, one other thing that kind of was really, really interesting, actually, is that in the community, you were never allowed to kind of discover yourself, right? Can you explain?
I wouldn't say we weren't allowed. I may have said that then. I'll clarify. It's not that Mormons aren't allowed to discover themselves, and it's not that they're not allowed to go in and discover the things that they want, the things that they like. It's that it's not encouraged, and it's almost to use an economic term, it's almost de-incentivized, meaning you as a Mormon, you are better off inside the Mormon community if, instead of trying to pursue your own, like, discovering yourself, you learn how to be part of a bigger whole, like to be part of something bigger, right? So part of Mormon doctrine is to be very selfless, right? And the interpretation of that doctrine most of the time is to know the difference between want and need, and the interpretation of that usually is you shouldn't want anything, right? Because wants it just makes you sort of proud and covetous is usually the word that's used. But there's just not really a place for it. There's no, there are programs in the church for all kinds of things. There's programs to help teenage kids, stay out of trouble. There's programs. The mission could be considered a program to keep 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds from getting hooked on drugs, which is what the rest of the country is doing that during that time in college. Well, that's the way that it's taught, right? There's programs to help kids get married. There's programs to help families stay. There's programs for all these things, but there's not really a program. It's not really incentivized for people to really go off and discover themselves, like a Rumspringa kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, go figure out what you want. That's almost, it's like I said, it's not that it's you can't do that and it's disallowed, but it's like, that's kind of a weird thing to do. You just don't step outside the rules. You just don't.
Well, here's a question. Do you think that there's almost too many programs in trying to do it rather than just letting you do it? Because
that's probably the most beautifully put that I've ever, hearing you say it that way. I never thought of it that way, that the programs might be the reason, because there's so much structure.
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't allow for you to find yourself because you're just like the structure is there. So it's like just just fall in line with the structure, fall in line with the doctrine, with the programs,
Well,
get with the program, so to speak.
It's just like your mission in Ukraine. I mean, going to Ukraine, you're kind of thrown into the into the water. You had to swim.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, we got
I mean,
we got a little bit of training. I was in a place called the MTC for about 3 months just to learn Russian and to kind of learn how to teach. But you don't really learn that much. Even, I mean, 3 months is the longest that anybody's ever there, and it's because we were learning Russian. Most people are there for like 6 weeks.
now granted, I mean, I'm saying maybe the programs are the problem. Then again, some people they thrive, with that. And
Right.
and they're just different types of people,
Right.
right? And there are some that they embrace the challenge. They learn how to swim and they come out really, really strong.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need some guidance, and I completely understand that. But at the end of the day, you seem the type where you actually flourish being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
More so, you're that type of personality.
Totally. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think I remember distinctly, if any of you have seen the Book of Mormon musical, have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay. It's hilarious. And it's almost 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word I'm
I
looking
was told
for?
I need to see this.
Yeah, it's good. It's very, very good. And especially if you served a mission, you will laugh because it's so good. Now there's language and there's some, there's some themes in there that might seem offensive to Mormons, but honestly, any Mormon who's not lying to themselves has to laugh at it because it is pretty funny and it is pretty true. But there's a song that's making fun of this idea in the Mormon church of what they call turn it off, which is if you have a thought that's not according to the doctrine of the church, just turn it off. Like if you think differently than what the brethren say, which is the leaders of the church, just turn it off. And they go so far, and I've actually seen this happen. By the way, I am not attacking the church at all. I'm just sort of saying how things are. There's even a lot of sentiment around people who identify as homosexuals, where it's like just turn it off. That's how you win. Pause for 1 second while I calm the dog down. Mia, shh, you're fine. That's what happens when you do a podcast with two dogs sitting on the bed right there.
Funny dog.
But yeah, there's this sentiment of like, just if what you want to say or what you have to say isn't in line with the general teachings of the church, then just stop feeling that way. And that was frustrating to me because I honestly tried to turn my mind off and stop thinking through these different ideas and these different places that raised questions more than they answered. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't. I remember 3 and 4 times saying, Brett, just stop. Like, just stop thinking so much. You're making it harder for yourself. Just stop. And I just couldn't. And it was part of this journey was me realizing that I'm not going to turn it off. I can't turn it off. I'm not me if I'm not turning it off. Exactly. And had a great conversation with a really good friend of mine who I haven't gotten permission whether I can share the name, so I'm not going to. But that talked about one of the big differences between super religious people like I was at the time and people that are just more spiritual is that spiritual people tend to just be spiritual and religious people love to talk about being spiritual. Mormons are really good at talking about being spiritual, not necessarily as good at being spiritual, but it's almost like if you can't talk about it, you're almost of a lesser status, if that makes sense. So I think it all just comes back to that, to come back to your question. I think it just comes back to me not being able to turn it off because that's who I am. I'm a questioner. I like to think, I philosophize, and I go to those places. I have to ask those questions or I'm not being true to myself.
That actually was a big part of what you were talking about in the podcast, whereas, really the way I understood it is you got to this point because you're innately, you're a curious person, right? And a lot of the things that you were seeing, you were just like, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, why is it done this way?
Yeah.
What is, you know, what is the point?
And I didn't find good answers. That's part of the thing. Is like it's being inquisitive is not a problem in and of itself. And I don't think anybody inside the church or out would say you shouldn't ask questions. That's bad. I think the problem is when that person can't answer your questions. Then it becomes don't ask questions, right? Just stick with what we've got. And I also don't mind if you just say we don't have the answer. But the issues was that, like, the official response to a lot of these questions was don't ask questions. Like, have faith.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like very plain and simple. Don't ask
a lot of times they would come out with these explanations that seemed almost like it was, like for the faithful will understand. That kind of thing. And it was like, I am faithful and I'm really smart and I don't get it. And so I think, and I'm probably overstating the simplicity of it. Like, there was probably a lot more to it, obviously, but it just seemed like we were encouraged to not dig too much. Just go with the program. It'll all work out if you go with the program. And to their credit, if you can manage to stick with the program 100%, your life is beautiful. Beautiful. There's so many things about the church that I miss, and I'll always miss, because there's just so many benefits to being Mormon. But I'm not one of those people that doesn't question. So,
well, there's, like I said before, there are people that thrive in structure, and I don't think anybody is going to frown upon that.
I don't.
I think it's completely fine.
Yeah, and I said that several times in the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not judging anybody that's in the church. I'm not judging people that stay forever. I'm not judging people who, come back to me and they say, well, I believe and I'm always going to believe. Awesome. I think that's great. I wish that I could do that.
Yeah.
Because it's simpler that way. And I'm not like saying that your life is easier than mine. I'm just saying it would be simpler than what the struggle that I had to go through is if I could just turn it off.
It's interesting because even from a personal experiences, so my family is half Nepalese, half Bulgarian, Orthodox Christian. And so I always heard this, this basically need to always be in church Sunday or always go to the temple, right? And so for me, it was like, well, where do I go?
Yeah.
Do I go to the temple or do I go to church?
Yeah.
Is it Shiva, Ganesh, and Vishnu, or is it God?
Yeah.
So right from the get-go, I was like, well, if I go one way, well, then I'm kind of like that I'm disrespecting the other side.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird for me, and eventually I chose to kind of take the best of both. I said, listen, I respect both sides 100%, and honestly, I would love to go to the temple and I would love to go to church, but I'm not going to say that I'm 100% here or there, because it's just I would be doing a disservice to me, because I'm yin and yang.
Yeah.
It's like,
yes.
Do I do that to myself? It's not even about one grandma versus the other.
Right.
It's not about that anymore. Right. It's like, I know where I'm from.
Yeah.
Why would I do that to myself?
Right.
And the best way is to say, hey, you know what? I love it both. I'm going to embrace all the positive things and just be me.
And that was one thing, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was one thing about when I was in college, I took a world religions class, and at BYU, which is the Mormon university, everything is somewhat suspect because it's all coming from a certain angle. There's a certain paradigm, or there's a certain way that they're teaching. This professor was, I thought he was pretty objective in most of the things that he was saying. But as we went through all these different religions, it seemed to me that they were all basically saying the same thing. And there were so many cool little pieces about each one that I really, really identified with. So, for example, I'm so glad you brought this up. For example, I really strongly identify with Taoism, which is the thing of yin and yang, right? Yin and yang.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of Taoism is that the struggle itself is necessary. Taoism is incredibly meta.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you look at the world, like for example, if we take a practical example, we take like the government of the United States right now. We have a two-party system. Hate it, love it, whatever you want. We have a two-party system, and that's kind of the way it works. Now, the Taoism would look at the two-party system and they would say, both parties agree with one, disagree with the other. It doesn't matter which side you're on. Both are necessary to balance the other out.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have conservatism to balance out liberalism, right? So everything that the liberals talk about, if you don't have a conservative on the other side, you can get an imbalance in points of view. So the crazy hardcore conservative right and the crazy hardcore conservative left are both necessary in order for the other to even exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I first heard that, when we were talking about that in the class, that hit me so hard because I've always already believed that. Mm-hmm. So that it made sense to me. And there's a lot of practical, or not practical, I should say. There's a lot of practices and doctrines of Buddhism and what's the Japanese one? Maybe I don't love it as much as I thought of. I don't even remember the name.
It's okay. Might be just a brain fart.
Yeah. A lot of Eastern religions, people get a bad name for being into Eastern religions because it makes them seem hippie. But I think a lot of it is just, it's around like letting go of the need to be present physically
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with yourself spiritually. And it's not for show. Nobody sees.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Like enlightenment in a Buddhist sense is not about people seeing you be enlightened. It's about you being okay with being enlightened all by yourself and nobody ever knowing
Mm-hmm.
or caring.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think in a lot of ways, and this is not a doctrinal thing in the Mormon church or in any Christian church, but I think you see this in practice a lot. The show of righteousness becomes almost the point of going to church. You go to church to show how I come to church because I'm a righteous person. And the people that aren't here are the not righteous people. And you even without, not directly, but you even indirectly refer to those that aren't here.
I mean, essentially just showing up.
Yeah.
Participating.
Yeah.
That's what we're
participating. But the funny thing about it is like, you go to church not because you're awesome. You go to church because you need something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was one thing that I believed internally, but I never really felt like I experienced that much at church, like other people coming there because they were broken.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to me that most of the people that I was interacting with at church, and in any church I've been to lots of churches, any church that I went to, it seemed like the interaction was less about, hey, you know what? You and I, we're in the same boat. We're both broke.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are broken and we're here because this gives us something that we can't get elsewhere. But that didn't seem to be the case most of the time. It was mostly you go and, so-and-so gets up and like in the Mormon church, they get up and give talks and they get up and it just seemed very like preachy. And, it wasn't quite to the point of saying I'm the greatest and you guys suck, but that was the feeling that was given off.
I've always had this question, right? If you don't go to church, whether it's whatever religion, does that mean you don't believe?
Was that a
no?
hypothetical, or do you want my opinion?
Well, I mean, what do you think? That's always been a question of mine.
That is a great question.
I'm not looking exactly.
That is a great question.
I'm not necessarily looking for you to answer it. Yeah. It's just, I've always wondered that.
Yeah, well, because I mean,
does that make me
the follow up to the question is, what is entailed in belief? Like, what do you have to do to believe?
Yeah.
And so there are some Christians that talk about, Mormons are really big on works, on faith without works is dead. This whole concept, which I think is a little bit too strictly enforced, this idea that you have to be perfect in order to. But I think the question itself brings up a good point, which is, isn't like, what really are we trying to accomplish here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the point of church? And is showing up at church, like, is that the important thing? And maybe in some instances for some people it is, but I think the question itself is powerful.
Yeah.
It's something to think about.
Honestly, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer.
Right.
It's just always been, a question for me.
Yeah.
Because, you can still practice and do all these things. I mean, I do understand that, you know, church Sunday it's just a time that collectively we've all agreed that that's the time for everybody to show up. Not necessarily for each other.
Right.
You don't have to prove anything, but hey, this is a place where you can go and you can practice.
Yeah. Well, I think another way of asking that same question, that for any Mormons that are watching or people like that, it's like, can you drink and be Mormon?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the drinking is not allowed. It's against what we call the word of wisdom. And yet, the funny thing about that is, I know personally several people who drink and are the hardcorest of Mormon.
See, that's interesting.
So it's like, you wouldn't know. They're not public about that, obviously. That doesn't necessarily, but for them, that's
discredit their Mormonism.
Exactly. But even that's actually part of the point too. That the idea that they would be discredited in their Mormonism for choices that they make. Yeah. Mormonism is a belief structure, right?
Right.
It's a tribe. It's like, these are people that come together that believe a certain set of principles, a certain set of things, and are trying to better their lives. But you know, as soon as one person is doing something that seems to be blatantly against the rules, they're sort of almost outcast. And it's like, aren't those the people? In theory, aren't those the people that we should be the most focused on, the most concerned about? I mean, Jesus himself who did he go talk to?
Yeah.
It wasn't the guys that said they were so holy. It was the prostitutes. It was like the prostitutes and like loan sharks. These are the people that he was talking to.
Huh.
So if we're following his example, wouldn't it make more sense that we would be a little bit less got to be perfect? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So anyway, I think your question brings up some good points.
Sorry, I wrote down a couple questions here. One of the parts I love, you're gonna know why I love this part, was you're talking about connection, okay, and you achieve that connection through Muay Thai. And number one, first of all, I have to say, I love the sport. Completely agree with you. But you know, what is it about Muay Thai? I mean, you say it, right? But like, what is it that makes you feel so connected?
This is good. The thing about Muay Thai for me is that it starts out as a purely physical pursuit, something that I really hadn't done before, right? And when you're that allows a lot of your natural instincts to bubble to the surface, things that I've repressed for a long time. So for me, my natural instinct was fear. The first time I remember to this day, in fact, it was with Roma, the first person that I ever worked with in a drilling situation. This is after I'd been working with our main trainer, the guy that owns the gym, for maybe a month and a half. And I've been taking power boxing classes just on the bag, but never like actually worked with anybody. I remember my first drill, the first set of punches that he threw, I freaked out. I was terrified. I'm like covering up, and I think everybody has a similar-ish experience. I think that I was a little bit more pansy about it than most, but I remember that was very revealing about myself. And I felt more connected in that moment to who I actually was than I had in the previous 20 years beforehand. Because you don't think you're scared. You don't walk around thinking, oh, I'm a pansy. I can't do it.
Right.
You think, no, I could take it. I'm not scared of anything. And then you get into a situation where, Roma he's not going to do much damage.
Right.
But I didn't know that at the time. And I was terrified. And
well, you didn't know what to expect.
Didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Exactly. So. And then when I went to go throw punches on him, like, it was the same fear. Just not knowing what I was doing and being out of my element and all those things. And that natural physical instinct, to me, connected me to myself and to what was happening. I didn't really comprehend it at the time, but as I look back, I look at the experiences sort of in total, those experiences, and that happened it continues to happen over and over and over and over again. That fear, that not necessarily fear, but going to a very like physically instinctive place, especially in a sparring round where you let your mind turn off, and your mind and your body come together, and you just do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think, you don't strategize, you don't say, oh, he's going to do this and I'm going to react. And you know when you're working with someone that's thinking or when you're thinking, because you can see it in their face.
Right.
And it totally ruins
Well,
the round
plus
for
it
you.
becomes super awkward.
It's super, super awkward. You see them like, oh, he threw a low kick. I'm gonna wait for the next one. I'm gonna check
Right.
it. And it's easy, it breaks up the flow. But in those moments when everything just shuts off. I remember there's been several rounds I've worked with you, working with Kenny, a lot of rounds that I've done where everything shuts off and you just go and you flow, and afterwards you just feel so. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. I feel so connected to just myself, to the ring, like to the person I'm dealing with, like the person I'm sparring with, because we're not separated from each other by thought or rationality or motive or motivation or any of that. It's literally just both of us trying to do the same thing in a very instinctive and physical way, which is, I think that's a lot of it.
One way I explain it is connect by disconnecting.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason why I say it that way is because, Muay Thai is, it's not to say that if you want to find yourself, Muay Thai is the answer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's more of Muay Thai was just the vehicle.
Yeah.
In which got you there.
Yeah.
Right? And when I say connect by disconnecting, it's just that type of sport where you have to be focused.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty, it's a demanding sport. You have to be very, very sharp. And I think, that's one reason why you potentially got there. And I think it's important for people to maybe find that. And I'm not saying go do Muay Thai.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm saying go do Muay Thai. He's not.
I'm also secretly saying go do Muay Thai because it's awesome. But I think what people need to find is the same type of vehicle that lets you disconnect from everything else so that you can connect with yourself first.
I think to clarify what you said before, you said Muay Thai allows you you have to focus.
Yeah.
I think it's important to realize, I don't think you mean focus as in concentrate. I think you mean focus as in be in one place. Like focused meaning like narrow, not focused meaning like, because what I found is because concentrate makes me think of like thinking.
Oh, yes.
Right. So,
yeah.
and maybe in concentrate you would think.
Yeah.
I think of,
I think
I know like you have to get to a point where you can shut everything else out.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
What's happening outside the gym shuts off. Bills shuts off. Your job, it shuts off. Girlfriend, gone. Doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing exists. Not even the sound of the timer exists. The only thing that exists is the guy in front of you or the girl in front of you that you're sparring with. And in those moments, the thing about that is you have to train so that you don't think in those places.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be so natural.
Yep.
It has to just flow. So you're training yourself, your mind and your body to not need to think in tandem, but rather to think as one, and to not think at all. So that thinking just goes out the window. You don't have to translate, input to reaction to motion. It's just boom. It just goes. And I think that's kind of the idea. Is the focus is being able to narrow the focus of what you're considering, the inputs that you're talking about. Because like when I work when I'm sparring, nothing else exists.
Yeah.
Nothing. And there's never been anything that I've ever done that's been like that.
Yeah, and I agree. The focus is, it's on that sport. It's just disconnecting from everything else.
Yeah. Actually, no, I lied. The only other thing that I've ever been able to say that I've truly disconnected in that same way, even close to what I did with Muay Thai, is when I'm sitting on the piano. There's every once in a while, I can sit down and just start sort of playing and lose myself.
It supports, kind of what I was saying.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be Muay Thai.
Exactly.
A lot of people find that, let's say, Zen, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people find that Zen even just through running. Like I know people, they're like, oh, I got to go on the run.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, like,
yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Go,
Yeah.
Because they're obsessed.
Yeah.
And one, obviously physically they want to be fit, and it's releasing endorphins, all these kind of things. But people go run early in the morning because that's their meditation.
It's quiet.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of people think when we talk about meditation, we think like, all right, I have to sit in a yoga pose with some incense and flowers. Anyway, to me that's like the hypothetical or typical.
I'll just take the incense and the flowers and leave the yoga pose out of it.
There you go. So, and people think like that's a meditation. Yeah. I need to go do that.
Yeah. When
they fail to realize that the meditation is doing what you love, actually.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, that's what meditation is.
Yeah.
It's when you're just completely happy, you're just doing that, you're focused, and just through that action, you're learning a lot about yourself.
I tell people all the time that Muay Thai is like yoga for me.
Yeah.
Because
it's my meditation.
Because it gives me the same, like, people, and I use yoga because that's a lot of people that have done yoga understand the meditative,
I'm not sure.
We're going to use that. If it's not a word, it is now. The meditative properties of yoga, to where you go in and it's like you get centered, and that's the whole point of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of surprising for a lot of people because Muay Thai is probably the most violent sport.
I think it's the most violent.
Yeah. Well, in terms of blood spilt, sanctioned blood spilt.
That is, in terms of hand to hand.
Yeah.
Like no weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even with all of that, it's just this beautiful meditative, like yoga-esque kind of thing. And it's just beautiful. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, what's nice about Muay Thai too is it's structure. There's a lot of respect in it too. So, it's a good, for people who may not have the respect part in a type of sport, it's very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just nice. It's uplifting to have that.
Yeah.
It's good to have that.
Well, I mean, simple things like the bow.
To bow.
To bow to your instructor when you see them, bow when you enter the ring, bow afterward. Like, it's just
everything
is just very, very respectful. Bow before you start a round, bow at the end of a round. Like, everything about it is just very, it's that same, goes back to that same sort of centering, grounding, Zen type of thing. And if you let that, some people, they do it and you can see them just going through the motions, and that deep connection to it doesn't really happen. So it's possible to do Muay Thai and not be zenned out of your mind like we are. But if you really allow yourself to, that's power right there. When you really allow yourself to kind of give in to the respect of it, to the culture of it, to the ritual of it, it can create. And interesting enough, I'm actually interested that I just said ritual, because I kind of blasted on ritual in the podcast.
Oh,
and I think part of the difference is, I think ritual in the Muay Thai sense, and this is free flow. I didn't think of this before, so we're going to see where this goes. I think ritual in the Muay Thai sense is something that allows us to connect to the sport itself, which I think, like you were saying, allows us to disconnect from the thought of it and rather just participate in it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think a lot of these indoctrination rituals, like I talked about before, are designed, I won't even say necessarily designed, because I can't say that they're designed to do this, but they have the effect of conditioning somebody's mind to not think in times when they should be thinking, right? So when, like, we shouldn't be thinking during Muay Thai, because that will get you hurt, and because you lose the effect. But when it comes to the way that you're going to live your life and sort of other more philosophical things, like maybe the thought should be there more. Anyway, that's a thought I'll have to think about for a month, and then we'll do a podcast episode on it.
So the concept of kind of connecting to yourself by, basically putting a curtain on everything else. I mean, it sounds like you didn't necessarily find that, in Mormonism. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's a huge part of the reason why I ended up leaving, was because I found this amazing experience that's consistent. I know what it takes to get this experience, and it's called show up to Muay Thai. I had the frustration with Mormonism all the time, which was, by doing all the things that I'm doing, I'm supposed to be having more of these sort of spiritual experiences, is the way we refer to them. But I just wasn't. And a lot of people have told me that it's because I wasn't doing the things, which wasn't true. I actually was doing the things, but then when I stopped, obviously I wasn't getting those spiritual experiences from there. But that type of real connection to self, I think, going back to your first question, which was, were we encouraged or allowed to to find ourselves?
Yeah. And again, I said allowed very loosely, so I don't want...
Yeah, no, I know.
I don't want anybody to get...
I know, I clarified that at the very beginning.
Upset or anything.
I just wanted to make sure I quoted you right, the word
Fair
for word,
enough.
verbatim.
Yeah.
I think that it's not so much that there's not a place for it. It's not so much that it couldn't have happened. It's that it's not really built into the system. Mm-hmm. So I guess no, there isn't really a place for it. It's not part of the written out plan.
Well, is it too much of, you should do this, and then after that you should do this, and then after that you should do this? It's almost like, well, hold on. Give me 2 seconds to breathe.
Yeah.
I kind of want to...
Where do I get to choose my path?
Yeah.
Like, give me like some options, and I can go A, B, or C.
Can I kind of maybe ask myself some questions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I think I mentioned
a little bit too forced. Is that again? I know nothing.
That's fair. No, it's very fair, and
about the community, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing. I'm honestly just very, very curious as to, if it is that way to some degree.
Yeah.
And
no, it is. Yeah. It definitely is. There, like I said, you can survive outside the norm, but the fact of the matter is, there is a sort of set path, and when you fall out of line, there is I'll say unofficial disdain for falling out of line. Unofficially official, we'll put it that way. So that the pattern goes like this. All right, here's the way that a Mormon life should be led. This is extremely simplified, right? So haters gonna hate, obviously, but don't quote me on this to the T. You're born, when you're born, it starts before you're even born, by the way. When you're born, if your parents are both members of the church, that's called being born in the covenant, which means you're sealed to your parents so that you can be with them forever, right? So that's just kind of the preface. When you're a kid, when you're first born, you get blessed by your dad. Then from the ages of 2 or 3 until 8, you're in a thing called nursery and primary, which is for the little kids. And you grow up and you learn the 13 articles of faith, like what Mormonism is all about. You learn the main scripture stories. You do Cub Scouts if you're a boy. You do Achievement Day if you're a girl. Like, there's these programs that you go through. When you turn 8, you graduate and you become... You get baptized. That's the age of baptism, right? So at 8 years old. Then from the ages of 8 to 12, you're in what's called senior primary, which is where you're supposed to kind of learn a little bit more and get ready for the boys, get ready to get the priesthood, which is when you're 12. And for the girls, get ready to be older girls or something. I wasn't part of that, so I don't really know. 12 to 18, you're part of what's called the young men's program, and you're part of what's called the Aaronic priesthood. So it's like the authority to run things in the church, but like junior. It's like the junior priesthood kind of thing. And then the girls are part of the young women, when they have different things they're supposed to do, and there's awards you can get that you work after and all these kinds of things. By the way, as a boy, you're expected fully to get your Eagle Scout, to become an Eagle Scout.
That's why. Which
I did.
That explains everything.
On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty, to go out of my country, et cetera, et cetera.
Pro camper.
Exactly. That's the best part that I took from it.
Hey.
You turn 18, and now it's the age is 18. At 18, boys go on their missions. I have one nephew that just left on his mission last week. I have one nephew that's in South America now, and then one that got back not too long ago from Philadelphia. When you're a girl, I think when you turn 19, you can go on a mission. You come back, and you immediately go off to college or whatever, but you go into what's called a singles ward. A singles ward is like a congregation designed to get you married. And that, you can't deny it. That's what they're for. You get married before you turn 25. Because one of the leaders of the church once said, 100 years ago, that any man who's older than 25 and unmarried is a menace to society, right? So
you were technically a menace.
I'm
then.
the worst of menaces. Although when I got married the first time, I was well under the age. I was like 22.
Okay.
So what happens is you go to a singles ward for the shortest amount of time possible. You meet a girl that you like-ish. You decide to get married. You get married 3 weeks later-ish, on average. And then you move into a married family ward, and you live out your life, you raise kids, and then the cycle starts over. And as you get older, you raise your kids, you see them off on their missions, you do all these things, and then then you get callings, and you're like the ward music leader, and there's just like there's a flow to it, there's a pattern to it. But like I said in the podcast episode, there's not really a program for people that jump around like I did, where like I was going well and good, and then it's like, oop, divorce, step back, do not pass go, do not collect $200,
Right.
and there's not really like a way to move forward. But like if you stay within that, and you listen, and you show up to church every week, and you go to all the meetings, and you fulfill your calling, you do whatever your assignment is, and you do all these things, and you can do that without being super questioning and inquisitive and curious and annoying like I was, like a lot of people are.
I mean, honestly, all that sounds great.
It's awesome.
Like
That's the
that
thing.
sounds really great.
It's so awesome if you can just stick with it.
You know what's funny is that
Oh, hang on. I have to point out this one other thing. I mentioned this before about coming home from a mission, but it was brought up to me again the other day. Coming home from a mission early is like the biggest mark of shame.
Oh.
It's
it's
even worse than getting divorced.
When you got hurt.
When I got hurt, I had an out.
Okay. So it wasn't that.
But I have friends. I have good, close friends who came home from their missions early for reasons that don't matter, and to this day are continuously judged.
Oh, well, that's
for coming home early.
That's kind of
so it's that same type of thing. If you follow the whole thing,
fair?
It's not fair at all. But if you follow the whole thing and you can sustain the whole process, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people that are they've done that and they're super happy, and most of them have reached out to me and they said, I love my life. The Mormonism's awesome. Right. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
But it breaks down when you don't follow the process completely. So I came home early. It messed with me. I got married, got divorced. It messed with me. I had questions, didn't get them answered. It messed with me. Like these things that I went through, it sort of breaks down the rosy hue, so to speak.
What's interesting is, you mentioned like this was determined, under 25, 100 years ago, this kind of thing. And what's interesting is like, as a society, just in general, the world, right? As human beings, as we get bigger, as we interact more and more and more, and we learn about all these different types of communities and cultures, you naturally, don't you just want to ask questions? I mean, here's what I'm wondering. Isn't this happening more often because of just the knowledge of everything else in the world? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think this is happening. This type of thing, people leaving the church over questions and stuff, is happening a lot more often. I'm not the first, not close.
Because I feel like before, the community was tighter. There was less. Maybe there was less technology for you to.
Well, there's definitely less interaction with the outside world.
Right. There's less for you to learn.
Yeah.
Other than what you're taught. Right?
Well, Mormonism, and for good reason, is a very close-knit and closed-off community.
Right.
They're very much of the mindset of like, be in the world but not of the world. Meaning, here's Mormons and the world is over there. And I mean, you have to be that way, because if you want to keep the doctrine pure, if you want to keep the everything about it pure, you can't just like release it into the wild. You have to keep it sort of isolated from that kind of thing. But what's happening now is what I think is happening now is the strategies of keeping people in the church that worked before, under the paradigm where there wasn't communication with the outside world, and it wasn't, like you say, all this information wasn't readily available to people. It was much easier to provide incentive for people to just stop asking questions. Whereas now it's much easier for me to go on the internet and read a bunch of things, and just like, I'm more exposed to other ideas by the sheer nature of the fact that it's 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm forced to think more. So I think, yeah, this is happening more because of the era that we're in, because of how prevalent technology is and information. And I think it's becoming more and more difficult. Most of the people that have reached out and expressed that they have had similar struggles and sentiments are the people that are, that they were strong members of the church, but they're the people that are like me, that were more inquisitive, more looking for, like asking questions and kind of going at things. And not to say the people that have reached out and said, I'm happy inside the church that you're dumb or anything. Just I've noticed that's been a trend, is that the people that are reaching out and saying, I feel the same, I've had the same sort of struggle. These are the people that are just, they're honestly trying to do what's right. They're honestly trying to be good, and they think about things and they question things, and things need to make sense.
Well, it's like, am I wrong to ask questions?
Right.
Which is, it's like, no, you shouldn't. We should never feel that way, right?
Right. And again, I don't think that, number one, that part of the problem with Mormonism as it is right now, as I see it, is that it's not that it's officially taught, don't ask questions. And it's not that it's unofficially believed by everyone individually, don't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's this middle ground where the top brass, so to speak, has kind of hinted at it, like have faith. And the middle brass has sort of enforced that by saying, I don't know how to answer that question. Read your scripture, say your prayers, have faith. And the lower brass, like just the members of the church, are either okay or that doesn't really work for me.
Right.
I need something more.
So no, I need an answer.
You're supposed to be the one with the answer. Like, I'm supposed to be able to come to you and ask questions and have you actually answer them. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and there is definitely a growing frustration among a lot of LDS people. LDS people that's Mormon speak for Mormon.
Okay.
That's kind of how they refer to themselves, how we used to refer to ourselves. But yeah, it's that's just kind of part of the thing is, a lot of those people are starting to ask questions because there are questions to be asked, and especially too as now, like, there's a lot of people are leaving the church now not because of discovering other things like I did. I think I'm on this eternal quest to be unique. I don't like to do things for the same reasons everybody else does, and it's a little bit of a pride thing for me. So I totally understand this, but I do believe in this case that I'm actually justified. A lot of people are leaving because they've researched church history and they discover things that bother them about church history. Mm-hmm. So things that happened in the past, the original leaders of the church, things they would do, things about polygamy and a lot of things in the early history of the church, and it really bothers them. And so they're like, I can't handle it, and they leave. And decisions are like, do what you're going to do, right? I didn't leave. I actually don't have any problem with any of that, because the core idea, if the core idea is true, then it doesn't really matter. Like, according to the core idea itself, it doesn't really matter all the church history stuff, because things can happen for any number of reasons as long as the end goal is achieved, right? And it's not quite as the same as like everything's fine with the Catholic Church even though they've gone through a bunch of stuff. It's sort of like, well, actually, I guess it is kind of like that. But at the end of the day, like, if God's in charge and if it's his thing and he actually is making that happen, it doesn't matter why, right? It does, because we have nothing to do with it. But the problem is, if that's true, then all these other things necessarily need to be true. And I've found those things not to be true. Like things like, if you read your scriptures and say your prayers every day, you will have spiritual experiences. Like, God will speak to you.
Right.
And he didn't. And you'll have these experiences that are described in similar ways to what happens when I spar in Muay Thai.
Do you expect that to happen? God to talk to you? In any case?
I strongly believe that he would for the large portion of my life. And there were some instances when, and I can't say either way, whether it was or wasn't, some instances where I really believed that he was speaking to me, but I couldn't tell you with any sort of certainty that I thought that he was. But I can speak with absolute certainty about what happens when I spar. And that, to me, like I was saying it earlier, the fact that it's consistent, the fact that it's the same, the fact that I know that when I put in what I need to put in, I get out what I need out. Like that to me, it's just so much more stable. It's not as fickle. And the idea of God to me being a fickle being who picks and chooses when and where he will react to the same set of inputs doesn't jive with the core idea of God. It just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Like if God's God, God's the same. Like he's the perfect example he would be the perfect example of responding, like doing things the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that could be a naive approach, obviously, but it comes back to the fact that I didn't leave because I got pissed off about something. I left because I found something that I liked better and that works for me way, way more. So.
I see. That's an interesting viewpoint. So how do you feel now? Now that it's out there, I mean, is it like a weight off your shoulders, or?
I wouldn't say weight off my shoulders.
What is it?
Although in a way, it's kind of liberating, because it's like I don't have to watch what I say in public, meaning on social media, because I have literally 0 Mormon friends now, like here.
Oh no.
Which is fine. That was by choice, and that happened after I stopped going to church. By the way, just so that people don't freak out. But it feels good to be honest.
Yeah.
To be real, like to be me. It feels good to have the real me known and understood. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking, because I statistically, it's going to go really south with some people. You know what I mean? Statistically, it's going to go really well with most people, and then there's going to be 4 or 5 people with which it's just going to be nasty. And I'm not a person to back away from a verbal argument. I love word sparring. And
You're pretty good at it.
Yeah. And so, and I have been, I've practiced my whole life. So.
Wait, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 9 siblings.
There you go.
There's 50 of us all together, including the kids. Actually, I think there's 52 now. But anyway, so I know, like, statistically speaking, it's going to get weird. It's going to get rough. It's going to get awkward and hard. But also, I don't really know, like, I don't know what the next steps are. I've had people reach out to me that I didn't know before and comment on the podcast. I've had people that I haven't talked to in years reach out and express similar interests or express different interests or viewpoints on it. And so I don't really know what the future holds as far as, what's going to happen with me now that I'm out with it. But it does feel more honest.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there are people out there that may be feeling the same things you are, but are just super scared?
Oh, I know there are. I've gotten text messages from some of them.
Just like, oh my God, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I agree, but I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, how do I find that zen?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's one of the kind of anxious feelings that they have. Yeah. I'm just like almost like trying to put myself maybe in somebody's position that through you, I'm just kind of trying to live it through you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I have no advice for you, because I'm, like I said before, I refuse to tell you what to do and to take on your choices for you. I will say this though. I think that Dennis and I have done a decent enough job explaining. We talked for a good portion of the time about the fact that it doesn't have to be one thing, right?
Right.
For me, it's Muay Thai and piano, like music. It could be anything. For you, honestly, it could be Mormonism. Could help you find that center, that zen. It just wasn't for me. So, like, don't think that because so many people are leaving, that's the right thing to do. Right? So basically I said, I'm committing to nothing.
Yeah.
And telling you that it has to be 100% you. You have to go deep and really, really discover what it is that you want. And one exercise that you might do that might help you get there that I'll suggest, and this is totally non-committal, is I don't know if you've seen the movie. If any of you have seen the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney, great movie. Kind of hard to follow sometimes, but he has this. There's this scene where he's giving this motivational address, and he walks up on stage and he has a backpack and he puts it on the stage, and he says, "Okay, I want you to imagine that this backpack contains everything that you own. So put everything that you own in this backpack, right? All of your house, your car, your bike, your bed, your everything, your computer, everything that you own. Put it in the backpack, and then I want you to imagine throwing it away, right? And then he says, now I want you to imagine putting every person in your life into the backpack, and then just throw them away. Now imagine putting every concern, every bill, everything, just put everything, unload everything into this bag and throw it away. What do you want to do now?" I would, that's a thought experiment. I would recommend, that's one of the things that I did. Well, actually, I didn't even have to do that thought experiment because I lost everything. And when you don't have, like, I got to the point where I didn't have friends. I didn't have a spouse. I didn't have dogs anymore. I didn't have things. I literally had to start over. And at that moment, it was easy for me to make decisions based on what I wanted because there was nothing else. There were no other inputs. So I think it's important that you act based on what you want, based on who you are, and then sort of go from there. So that's all I'll say about that.
I think one important thing that you said is the starting over portion. And I feel like a lot of people have fear of hitting that quote unquote rock bottom. And honestly, that's probably one of the, for people that have hit that and have gotten out of it, they'll always tell you 9 times out of 10 that was the most important thing of their life. And
that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
It's the catalyst.
And, for anybody listening out there, I would say my piece of advice would be, don't be afraid to get there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have to understand that rock bottom is probably exactly what you need to feel to understand what's coming next. Yeah. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, it's you need to know. Yeah. You need to know.
Yeah. On a less depressing note, you also don't feel alone. If you ever, like, if you need someone to talk to, there are people that will talk to you. And if nobody else, if you can't find someone to talk to, just like hit me up, just comment on a video or tweet at me. I'll put my link on there, or hit me up on Facebook or whatever. I'm happy to have conversations. I'm going to tell you the same things, but at least I'll do it directly to you instead of in a general sense. But I think that's very good. Don't be afraid. I think don't be afraid in general, but especially don't be afraid of that place that's really going to be the catalyst for change, the catalyst for the turnaround. So anyway, that was good. Yeah. Do you have any more questions?
I think I've asked the bulk and the majority of them. No, not really. Not anymore. It's kind of cool to kind of
Did I answer them? Did I answer them well? Like, was it?
You did.
Did I? Okay.
You did. It's just it's very interesting from my point of view to kind of to see somebody kind of go through this, or even just to even learn about it. Right. Not necessarily see. I didn't see you, but
just to get more insight into the journey, like what's happening, the mindset.
For me, I always talk about the beauty of difference. For me, it's great because I've never known this side, this type of community or this type of story. So I'm learning as we go. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think it's awesome.
Well, no, I'm glad when you came in the night and you were talking to me about the podcast and how you enjoyed it and how things were going. Like something, I don't know, I'd had people say that they enjoyed it, but something about like the way that you were expressing it was like it actually like affected you. You know what I mean? Like that to me is, I didn't really try obviously for that to happen, but I think when that experience happens and it can help somebody else, like it almost makes the crappiness of the experience worth it when the fact that you went through it helps somebody else in some way.
I wanted to say the same thing. It's about, no, really, at the end of the day, You know, we want
Yeah.
I hope somebody can take it
Yeah.
and use it to their benefit, or just listen and understand and at least feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. You definitely don't want to feel like you're alone. Well, on that note, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you stayed this late, I applaud you and I thank you for sticking around for the meta version of the conversation of the Brett Martineau exit, the Brexit, which is so ironic, by the way, that that's happening at the same time, because it's perfect for me too. Coming up on the podcast shortly, soonly, we're going to be having we're going to place all of the UFC champions on the Avengers list. We're going to match them up.
Oh, we got to finish that.
That's going to be epic. It's going to be so good. I'm excited. We've got some cool guests that are going to be coming on in the coming week-ish. We got some cool stuff with Muay Thai, with training, with fighting that we're going to be talking about, which is going to be a lot of fun. And as always, there will be daily random ramblings from yours truly. And as often as I can get Dennis in here to bounce ideas off of, we'll do that as well. So
my pleasure.
There are also some fights next week, so we'll probably do some fight commentary about that. So hopefully you tune in, check us out. I'm going to say this at the very end of every video. Go ahead and hit subscribe below, because at some point I might want to make money off this, and the more of you that subscribe, the better off it is for me and for Dennis. So go ahead and do that. We also have this is on iTunes, the podcast. So if you ever just want to listen to the audio and don't want to look at my ugly mug, which I don't blame you, I wouldn't either. Or you're traveling in your car, you're at your work, whatever, and you can't just be watching a video the whole time. I'll put the link in the description, and you can go check that out. Download to your heart's content. Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we will catch you on El Flipside. Peace out.